The Montana wilderness stretched as far as the eye could see, a vast expanse of rugged beauty that both awed and humbled those who ventured into its depths. Nestled within this untamed landscape, a lone cabin stood as a testament to human resilience, its weathered wooden walls bearing witness to countless seasons of nature's fury. For Jack Hawkins, this isolated haven was more than just a retreat. It was home. At 45, the former wildlife biologist had traded the bustle of city life for the serenity of the mountains, seeking solace in the very wilderness he had spent years studying. His salt and pepper hair and the deep lines etched around his eyes spoke of a man who had seen both the harshness and the beauty of the natural world. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, Jack stood on his porch, a steaming mug of coffee warming his calloused hands. The crisp mountain air filled his lungs, carrying with it the promise of another day in paradise. But even as he savored the tranquility, a nagging sense of unease tugged at the corners of his mind. The past week had been unseasonably cold, with temperatures plummeting to record lows. While Jack was accustomed to the extremes of mountain weather, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The forest, usually alive with the sounds of wildlife, had grown unnaturally quiet. It was as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the eerie silence. Shaking off his apprehension, Jack retreated into the warmth of his cabin. The interior was a reflection of its owner, practical, unassuming, yet filled with character. Bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with field guides and scientific journals. A worn leather armchair sat before the fireplace, its cushions molded to Jack's form after countless nights spent reading by the flickering flames. As he moved about his morning routine, Jack's thoughts drifted to the reason he had chosen this life of solitude. It had been 5 years since the accident, 5 years since he had lost Sarah. The memory of his wife's laugh, once as vibrant and full of life as the forest itself, now echoed hollowly in the recesses of his mind. She had been his partner in every sense of the word, sharing his passion for wildlife and his dreams of making a difference in the world. The day of the accident had started like any other. They were tracking a pack of wolves, part of a long-term study on predator-prey dynamics. Sarah had insisted on getting closer for a better view, her enthusiasm overriding Jack's usual caution. Neither of them had noticed the unstable ground until it was too late. In a matter of seconds, the earth had given way beneath Sarah's feet, sending her plummeting down a steep ravine. Jack closed his eyes, willing away the images that still haunted his dreams. The sound of her scream, the sickening thud as she hit the rocks below, the agonizing wait for the rescue helicopter, every detail was seared into his memory. In the aftermath of the tragedy, he had blamed himself, convinced that his failure to protect her had cost Sarah her life. Unable to face the guilt and the pitying looks from colleagues, Jack had retreated to this cabin, burying himself in isolation. What had started as a temporary escape had slowly morphed into a new way of life. Here, surrounded by the wilderness, he could almost pretend that Sarah was still with him, her spirit living on in every rustling leaf and babbling brook. A sharp crack from outside jolted Jack from his reverie. His senses, honed by years in the field, immediately went on high alert. The sound had come from the edge of the clearing, where the neatly chopped firewood was stacked against the treeline. Moving with the silent grace of a seasoned outdoorsman, Jack made his way to the window, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. At first, he saw nothing out of the ordinary. The clearing lay still, bathed in the soft morning light. But as his gaze swept across the tree line, a flash of movement caught his attention. There, partially obscured by the shadows of the forest, stood a massive grizzly bear. Jack's breath caught in his throat. In all his years studying wildlife, he had never seen a bear quite like this one. Its fur was a rich, dark brown, almost black in the dim light. But it wasn't the bear's size or coloring that held Jack transfixed. It was the look in its eyes. Those deep, amber orbs seemed to hold an intelligence that went beyond mere animal instinct. As Jack watched, barely daring to breathe, the bear took a tentative step forward. It was then that he noticed the 2 small cubs trailing behind their mother, their fur still fluffy with youth. The sight of the little family stirred something in Jack's chest, a mixture of awe and a long-forgotten sense of protectiveness. The mother bear's movements were slow and deliberate, her massive head swinging from side to side as she sniffed the air. It was clear that she was searching for something, driven by a need that overrode her natural caution around human dwellings. Jack's mind raced, trying to understand what could have brought this family to his doorstep. Suddenly, the pieces fell into place. The unseasonable cold, the eerie silence in the forest, it all made sense. The harsh weather must have disrupted the bears' normal foraging patterns, driving them to seek food in increasingly desperate places. With a jolt of realization, Jack remembered the bag of trash he had left on the porch the night before, intending to take it to the compost pile in the morning. Even as the thought crossed his mind, the mother bear's head snapped towards the porch, her nostrils flaring. In 3 powerful strides, she had reached the steps, her cubs scrambling to keep up. Jack held his breath, silently willing the bear to take the food and leave. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the mother bear reared up on her hind legs, reaching for the trash bag, her weight caused the old wooden steps to creak ominously. The sudden noise startled the cubs, who let out high-pitched whines of distress. In that instant, everything changed. The mother bear, startled by her cubs' cries and the unfamiliar sound beneath her feet, lost her balance. With a thunderous crash, she toppled backwards, landing heavily on the frozen ground. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs, leaving her momentarily stunned. Jack watched in horror as the scene unfolded. The cubs, terrified by their mother's fall, began to panic. One darted towards the tree line, while the other, in its confusion, scrambled up the porch steps and pressed itself against the cabin door. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Jack could hear his own heart pounding in his ears as he assessed the situation. The mother bear was already beginning to stir, shaking her massive head as she struggled to her feet. Her eyes, once filled with hunger, now blazed with protective fury. In that moment, Jack knew he had a decision to make, one that could very well cost him his life. Every instinct, every shred of self-preservation screamed at him to stay inside, to let nature take its course. But as he looked at the terrified cub huddled against his door, something deep within him shifted. Without fully understanding why, Jack found himself moving towards the cabin door. His hand closed around the cold metal of the doorknob, and he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, he turned the knob and slowly pulled the door open. The cub, startled by the sudden movement, let out a pitiful whimper. Its dark eyes, wide with fear, met Jack's gaze. In that moment of connection, Jack saw not just a wild animal, but a vulnerable, living being in need of help. "It's okay, little one," Jack murmured, his voice low and soothing. "Let's get you back to your mama." Keeping his movements slow and deliberate, Jack crouched down, making himself as non-threatening as possible. The cub pressed itself further against the door frame, trembling visibly. Out of the corner of his eye, Jack could see the mother bear lumbering towards them, her teeth bared in a fearsome snarl. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. Jack knew that if he made one wrong move, if he showed even a hint of aggression, the mother bear would be upon him in an instant. Yet, despite the danger, a strange calm had settled over him. It was as if all his years of studying and observing wildlife had been leading to this moment. "Easy now," Jack murmured, not sure if he was talking to the cub or its rapidly approaching mother. "We're all friends here." With infinite care, he reached out a hand, palm up, towards the cub. The little bear sniffed cautiously, its nose twitching as it caught Jack's scent. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, miracle of miracles, the cub took a tentative step forward, pressing its furry head against Jack's palm. The touch sent a jolt through Jack's system. The cub's fur was coarse yet soft, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill in the air. In that instant, all of Jack's fears and doubts melted away. He was no longer an intruder in the wilderness, but a part of it, connected to this small, vulnerable creature in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. A low growl brought Jack back to the present. The mother bear had reached the bottom of the porch steps, her massive form casting a shadow over man and cub alike. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and protective rage, bore into Jack's with an intensity that made his breath catch. In that moment, Jack knew that his next actions would determine not just his fate, but that of the cubs as well. Drawing on every ounce of knowledge and intuition he had gained over his years in the wild, he made a decision that flew in the face of conventional wisdom. Slowly, deliberately, Jack began to sing. The melody was one Sarah had loved, a simple folk song about the beauty of the mountains. His voice, rough from disuse, cracked on the high notes, but he pressed on. As the familiar words flowed from his lips, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. Whatever happened next, he was exactly where he was meant to be. To Jack's amazement, the mother bear's aggressive stance began to soften. Her ears, which had been flattened against her head, slowly perked up. The growl rumbling in her chest faded to a low hum. It was as if the music had broken through some invisible barrier, connecting man and beast in a way that transcended species. Encouraged by this response, Jack continued to sing. He kept his movements slow and gentle as he scooped the cub into his arms. The little bear, seemingly content in his embrace, nuzzled against his chest. With infinite care, Jack descended the porch steps, his eyes never leaving those of the mother bear. As he reached the bottom step, Jack knelt down, gently setting the cub on the ground. The little bear hesitated for a moment, looking back at Jack with what almost seemed like gratitude. Then, with a happy chirp, it scampered to its mother's side. The reunion between mother and cub was a sight that Jack knew he would carry with him for the rest of his days. The big bear nuzzled her offspring, checking it over for any sign of harm. Her eyes, which had been filled with such fury moments before, now shone with relief and love. As Jack watched the tender scene unfold, movement at the edge of the clearing caught his eye. The second cub, which had fled in terror earlier, was cautiously making its way back to its family. The mother bear let out a soft chuff of welcome, gathering both of her children close. For several long moments, the strange tableau held man and bears regarding each other with a mixture of caution and newfound respect. Then, as if by some unspoken signal, the mother bear turned and lumbered towards the forest. Her cubs fell in line behind her, their little legs working double time to keep up with her long strides. At the edge of the clearing, the mother bear paused. She turned her massive head, her gaze once again locking with Jack's. In her eyes, he saw a depth of understanding that took his breath away. It was a look that seemed to say, "Thank you," and "We are not so different, you and I." Then, with a final chuff, she disappeared into the shadows of the forest, her cubs close behind. Jack stood rooted to the spot, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. The adrenaline that had been coursing through his veins began to ebb, leaving him feeling shaky and lightheaded. Slowly, he sank to the ground, his back pressed against the porch steps. As the reality of the situation washed over him, Jack felt a laugh bubbling up from deep in his chest. It started as a low chuckle, then grew until he was doubled over, tears streaming down his face. He laughed until his sides ached, until the sound echoed through the clearing and bounced back from the surrounding mountains. In that laughter, Jack felt years of grief and isolation begin to crumble away. The wall he had built around his heart, meant to protect him from further pain, was no match for the sheer wonder of what he had just experienced. For the first time in 5 long years, he felt truly alive. As his laughter subsided, Jack wiped the tears from his eyes and looked out at the forest. The morning sun had fully risen now, bathing the wilderness in a golden glow. The trees seemed to shimmer with new life, and the air was filled with the songs of returning birds. It was as if the entire forest was celebrating the extraordinary encounter that had just taken place. Slowly, Jack got to his feet. His body ached from the tension it had been under, but his spirit felt lighter than it had in years. As he made his way back into the cabin, his eyes fell on a framed photo of Sarah that sat on the mantel. Her smile, frozen in time, seemed to shine with a new brightness. "You would have loved this, Sar," Jack murmured, running a finger along the edge of the frame. Maybe you were here, in a way, watching over me, keeping me safe. For the first time since her death, the thought of Sarah didn't bring with it a wave of crushing grief. Instead, Jack felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of connection to something greater than himself. He realized that in isolating himself, he had been doing a disservice not just to himself, but to Sarah's memory as well. She had loved life with a fierce passion, throwing herself into every new adventure with unbridled enthusiasm. The Sarah he had known and loved wouldn't have wanted him to hide away from the world. She would have wanted him to live, to continue the work they had started together, to make a difference in whatever way he could. With a newfound sense of purpose, Jack moved to his desk. He pulled out a fresh notebook, one that had been sitting unused since his retreat to the cabin. On the first page, he began to write, detailing every aspect of his encounter with the bears. As the words flowed from his pen, Jack felt a familiar excitement building within him, the thrill of scientific discovery, of adding to the world's understanding of these magnificent creatures. But this wasn't just a clinical account of animal behavior. Jack found himself pouring his heart onto the pages, describing not just what had happened, but how it had made him feel. He wrote about the fear, the awe, the moment of connection that had transcended the boundaries between species. And as he wrote, he began to see the larger implications of what had occurred. In a world where human-wildlife conflict was an ever-growing problem, his experience offered a glimpse of another way. It showed that with patience, understanding, and a willingness to see the world through another's eyes, even the most seemingly insurmountable barriers could be overcome. As the day wore on, Jack's writing took on a new urgency. He realized that his story needed to be shared. It had the potential to change hearts and minds, to inspire a new generation of conservationists, to bridge the gap between humanity and the natural world. With trembling fingers, Jack reached for his satellite phone, a piece of technology he had all but forgotten in his years of isolation. He dialed a number he still knew by heart, holding his breath as it rang. "Dr. Thompson's office? How may I help you?" A cheerful voice answered. Jack cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. "This is Jack Hawkins. I need to speak with Dr. Thompson. It's urgent." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Jack? Is it really you? We've been so worried." "Hold on. I'm putting you through right away." A moment later, a familiar voice came on the line. "Jack? My God. It's good to hear your voice. Are you all right?" Dr. Emily Thompson had been Jack and Sarah's mentor at the university, a brilliant ecologist who had become more like family over the years. The concern in her voice made Jack's throat tighten with emotion. "I'm okay, Emily," he said, his voice rough. "Better than okay, actually. Something incredible has happened, and I need your help to share it with the world." Over the next hour, Jack poured out his story. He told Emily about the bears, about the moment of connection, about the realization that had followed. As he spoke, he could hear the excitement building in Emily's voice. "Jack, this is extraordinary," she said when he had finished. "What you're describing. It could revolutionize our understanding of bear behavior, not to mention human-wildlife interactions. We need to get this documented, peer-reviewed, published." "I know," Jack replied, a hint of his old enthusiasm creeping into his voice. "But I was thinking we could do more than that. What if we turned this into a larger project? A study on nonviolent conflict resolution between humans and large predators." Emily's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Yes. Oh, Jack, do you know how long we've been waiting for something like this? The funding opportunities alone. But more importantly, the impact this could have on conservation efforts worldwide." As they talked, plans began to take shape. Emily would arrange for a team to come to Jack's cabin, bringing with them the latest in non-invasive tracking and observation technology. They would set up a long-term study of the bear family, while also documenting Jack's experience for both scientific journals and popular media. By the time Jack hung up the phone, his head was spinning with possibilities. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, a reason to look forward to the future. But even as excitement coursed through him, a small doubt nagged at the back of his mind. What if the bears never came back? What if that magical moment of connection had been a one-time occurrence, never to be repeated? As if in answer to his unspoken question, a low rumble echoed from the edge of the clearing. Jack's head snapped up, his heart pounding in his chest. There, just visible in the lengthening shadows of late afternoon, stood the mother bear. Her cubs frolicked at her feet, tumbling over each other in a playful wrestling match. The big bear's eyes met Jack's, and in that gaze he saw a glimmer of recognition. She remembered him, and more importantly, she had chosen to return. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of a relationship, one that transcended the usual boundaries between man and wild. With a sense of wonder, Jack realized that his life had come full circle. The tragedy that had driven him into isolation had also set the stage for this miraculous encounter. In trying to escape the pain of his loss, he had unknowingly positioned himself to make a discovery that could change the world. As he watched the bear family forage at the edge of the clearing, Jack felt a presence beside him. It wasn't anything he could see or touch, but he knew in his heart that Sarah was there. Her spirit, so vibrant and full of life, seemed to infuse the very air around him. "You were right, Sar," he whispered, a smile tugging at his lips. "There's still so much wonder in this world. Thank you for helping me see it again." The mother bear lifted her head, her nose twitching as she caught Jack's scent on the breeze. For a moment, man and beast regarded each other, two sentient beings sharing a connection that defied explanation. Then, with a soft chuff, she turned and ambled back into the forest, her cubs bouncing along behind her. Jack watched them go, his heart full to bursting. He knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be skeptics to convince, data to analyze, papers to write. But for the first time in years, he felt ready to face those challenges. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Jack stepped back into his cabin. But this time, it didn't feel like a retreat. Instead, it felt like a base camp, a place from which to launch new adventures and make new discoveries. He moved to his desk, pulling out a fresh sheet of paper. At the top, in bold letters, he wrote, "Project Ursus, bridging the gap between humans and bears." Below that, he began to sketch out ideas, his pen flying across the page as inspiration struck. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to her word, Emily had mobilized a team of researchers, and Jack's once quiet cabin now buzzed with the energy of scientific inquiry. Camera traps were set up throughout the surrounding forest, designed to capture the movements of the bear family without disturbing them. State-of-the-art tracking collars, lightweight and non-invasive, were prepared for when the team could safely tag the bears. Jack found himself thrust back into the world of academia, but this time it was different. The passion that had driven him in his youth was rekindled, but it was tempered now by wisdom and a deep, almost spiritual connection to the wilderness around him. As the days grew longer and spring began to soften the harsh edges of winter, the bear family became regular visitors to the clearing. They never approached as closely as they had on that first, fateful day, but their presence was a constant reminder of the fragile trust that had been established. Jack spent hours observing them, meticulously recording their behaviors and interactions. He noticed how the mother bear would often pause at the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning until they found him. It was as if she was checking in, acknowledging the strange truce that had formed between them. The cubs, growing rapidly as the weeks passed, became bolder in their explorations. Jack watched with fascination as they learned to fish in a nearby stream, their clumsy attempts slowly becoming more skillful under their mother's patient guidance. One afternoon, as Jack sat on his porch sketching the cubs' antics, he noticed something that made his breath catch. The larger of the two cubs, whom he had privately nicknamed Trouble for its adventurous spirit, was limping slightly. As he watched, the cub favored its left front paw, occasionally stopping to lick at it with a whimper. Jack's first instinct was to rush to the cub's aid, but years of training held him back. Interfering with wild animals, even with the best intentions, could do more harm than good. Instead, he carefully documented his observations, noting the cub's behavior and any signs of distress. That night, as the research team gathered for their daily debrief, Jack shared his concerns. "I'm worried about infection," he explained, pointing to the footage they had captured of the limping cub. "If it's a thorn or a splinter, it could become serious if left untreated." Dr. Anita Rodriguez, a veterinarian specializing in wildlife medicine, leaned in to study the footage more closely. "You're right to be concerned," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The question is, what can we do about it? Attempting to treat a wild bear cub is incredibly risky, both for us and for the bears." The team fell into a heated discussion, weighing the pros and cons of intervention. Some argued that they had a responsibility to help, given their unique relationship with this bear family. Others cautioned against any action that might erode the delicate trust they had built. As the debate raged on, Jack found his mind drifting back to that first encounter. He remembered the look in the mother bear's eyes, the depth of understanding that had passed between them. An idea began to form, wild and unlikely, but somehow feeling right. "What if," he said slowly, causing the room to fall silent. "What if we don't treat the cub directly? What if we give the mother bear the means to help her own cub?" The team looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Jack leaned forward, his eyes alight with excitement. "Bears are incredibly intelligent creatures. In the wild, they've been observed using tools and problem-solving in complex ways. What if we set up a sort of medicinal feeding station? Something with natural antibiotics and healing agents that the mother could choose to use if she sees fit." The idea was met with a mix of amazement and doubt. It was unprecedented, risky, and flew in the face of conventional wildlife management practices. But as the team discussed the possibilities, a sense of excitement began to build. Over the next few days, Jack worked closely with Dr. Rodriguez to develop a safe, natural remedy that could help with the cub's potential infection. They created a mixture of honey, a natural antibacterial agent, comfrey, known for its ability to help heal wounds, and other herbs with medicinal properties. The challenge was in the delivery method. They needed something that would attract the bear's attention but wouldn't be mistaken for regular food. After much trial and error, they settled on a design. A hollow log, partially split open, with the medicinal mixture spread inside. The log would be secured to prevent the bears from carrying it off, and placed just at the edge of the clearing. As they set up the log, Jack felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. There was no guarantee that the bears would understand or use what they had created. But he had faith in the connection he had formed with the mother bear, in the intelligence he had witnessed in her eyes. The wait was agonizing. For 2 days, the bears didn't appear in the clearing at all. Jack began to worry that their scent on the log had scared the family away. But on the 3rd day, just as the sun was setting, the mother bear emerged from the forest, her cubs in tow. Jack and the research team watched with bated breath from the cabin, not daring to move or make a sound. The mother bear approached the log cautiously, her nose twitching as she caught the scent of the honey mixture. She circled it once, twice, before finally leaning in to investigate more closely. What happened next left the entire team in awe. The mother bear gently nudged the limping cub towards the log. As if understanding exactly what was needed, she guided the cub's injured paw into the split in the wood, where it would come into contact with the healing mixture. The cub squirmed at first, uncomfortable with the strange substance. But under its mother's patient guidance, it allowed its paw to remain in contact with the mixture. After a few moments, the mother bear carefully licked the cub's paw clean, ingesting some of the medication herself in the process. This ritual was repeated over the next several days. Each time the bear family visited, the mother would guide the injured cub to the log. Gradually, the team noticed an improvement in the cub's gait. The limp became less pronounced, and soon, Trouble was back to its playful self, wrestling with its sibling and exploring the clearing with renewed energy. The success of this intervention sent ripples through the scientific community. Jack and his team had demonstrated a new paradigm in wildlife management, one that respected the intelligence and agency of wild animals while still offering aid when needed. As spring gave way to summer, the project expanded in ways Jack could never have imagined. Other researchers, inspired by the bear study, began to explore similar non-invasive, cooperative approaches with different species. A team in Africa was using similar methods to treat injured elephants. In India, scientists were applying the principles to help tigers coexist more peacefully with local villages. One warm evening, as Jack sat on his porch watching the bear family forage at the edge of the clearing, he felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The mother bear looked up, meeting his gaze with what he could have sworn was a nod of acknowledgement. Her cubs, now nearly half her size, tumbled and played nearby, their happy grunts carrying on the evening breeze. Jack's eyes drifted to the framed photo of Sarah that he had brought out to the porch. "We did it, Sar," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We found a way to bridge the gap, to coexist." As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sweet scent of wildflowers. Jack closed his eyes, breathing in deeply. In that moment, he felt more connected to the world around him than he ever had before. The grief that had driven him into isolation had transformed into something beautiful, a deep, abiding love for the wilderness and all its inhabitants. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring. Jack lingered on the porch, savoring the moment. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries. But for now, he was content to simply be a man at peace with himself and his place in the grand tapestry of nature. As he finally turned to go inside, Jack paused at the doorway. He looked back at the clearing, now bathed in soft moonlight. The bear family had disappeared into the shadows of the forest, but he could feel their presence, a comforting awareness that he was no longer alone in this vast wilderness. "Good night, friends," he murmured, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Until tomorrow." With that, Jack stepped into his cabin, closing the door softly behind him. But it was no longer a barrier between him and the outside world. Instead, it was simply a thin membrane, connecting two parts of a greater whole, man and nature, existing in harmony, each enriching the other in countless, miraculous ways. And so, as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, the Montana wilderness cradled its inhabitants, bear and man alike, in its ancient, nurturing embrace. The story of Jack and the bears was just beginning, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, curiosity, and the unbreakable bonds that connect all living things. In the years that followed, Jack's work would go on to inspire a new generation of conservationists, changing the way humans interacted with the natural world. But for Jack, the true miracle would always be that first moment of connection. A man and a bear, two mothers' sons, finding common ground in the most unexpected of circumstances. It was a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope can find us. That sometimes, the very thing that breaks our heart can also be the key to healing it. And that in the vast wilderness of life, none of us, human or animal, are ever truly alone. As the years passed, Jack's work with the bears continued to evolve and expand. The initial project, which had started as a simple observation of one bear family, had grown into a comprehensive study of bear behavior and human-wildlife coexistence. Researchers from around the world flocked to Jack's remote cabin, eager to learn from his groundbreaking approach. One crisp autumn morning, as Jack sat on his porch sipping coffee and reviewing data from the latest tracking collars, he heard the familiar sound of a helicopter approaching. It was earlier than usual for the weekly supply run, and Jack felt a twinge of curiosity as he watched the aircraft descend into the small clearing near his cabin. As the rotor blades slowed, a figure emerged from the helicopter, ducking low to avoid the downdraft. Jack's eyes widened in recognition. It was Dr. Emily Thompson, her silver hair whipping around her face as she straightened up and looked towards the cabin. "Emily," Jack called out, setting down his mug and striding towards his old mentor. "What brings you all the way out here?" Emily's face broke into a wide grin as she embraced Jack. "Oh, just a little news I thought you might want to hear in person," she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Inside the cabin, Over a fresh pot of coffee, Emily shared the reason for her unexpected visit. "Jack, your work here, it's been nominated for the Darwin Wallace Medal. The Royal Society wants to recognize your contributions to the field of evolutionary biology and ecology." Jack sat back, stunned. The Darwin Wallace Medal was one of the highest honors in the scientific community, awarded only once every 50 years. I don't know what to say," he stammered, his mind reeling. Emily reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to say anything, Jack. Your work speaks for itself. The way you've revolutionized our understanding of interspecies communication, your non-invasive approaches to wildlife management, it's changing the entire field." As the news sank in, Jack felt a complex mix of emotions wash over him. Pride in the recognition of his work, certainly, but also a deep sense of humility. He thought of the mother bear and her cubs, of the countless moments of connection he'd experienced over the years. "This isn't just my work," he said softly. "It's theirs too. The bears, the forest, even Sarah." Emily nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I know. And that's exactly why you deserve this, Jack. You've shown us all a new way of seeing the natural world, of being a part of it rather than apart from it." The conversation shifted to the logistics of the award ceremony, which would be held in London the following spring. As Emily talked about travel arrangements and press conferences, Jack found his attention drawn to the window, where he could just make out the shape of the mother bear and her now-grown cubs foraging at the edge of the clearing. "Emily," he interrupted gently, "I want to accept this honor, but I need to do it in a way that stays true to what we've accomplished here." Over the next few hours, Jack and Emily hatched a plan. Instead of a traditional award ceremony in London, they would bring the Royal Society to Montana. It would be a chance not just to celebrate Jack's work, but to showcase the entire project, to let the world see firsthand the incredible relationships that had been forged between humans and bears. As spring arrived, bringing with it new life and vibrant color to the Montana wilderness, final preparations were underway for the awards ceremony. A small, eco-friendly viewing platform had been constructed at the edge of the clearing, allowing visitors to observe the bears in their natural habitat without disturbing them. On the day of the ceremony, scientists, conservationists, and journalists from around the world gathered in the clearing. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Jack stood at the podium, his heart racing as he looked out over the assembled crowd. Just as he was about to begin his speech, a hush fell over the gathering. At the edge of the clearing, the mother bear had appeared, her two grown cubs flanking her. The bear's gaze swept over the crowd before settling on Jack. For a moment, man and bear regarded each other, a silent communication passing between them. Jack smiled, then turned back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice strong and clear, "what you're witnessing right now is the real reason we're all here today. This is not about me or any single person. It's about the incredible bonds that can form when we approach the natural world with respect, curiosity, and open hearts." As Jack spoke, weaving together the story of his work with the bears and his vision for the future of conservation, the mother bear settled at the edge of the clearing. Her cubs, now impressive adults themselves, began to playfully wrestle nearby, seemingly unperturbed by the gathered humans. The sight of wild bears peacefully coexisting with a group of people was powerful testimony to the success of Jack's work. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing this extraordinary moment for posterity. As Jack concluded his speech and accepted the Darwin Wallace Medal, he held it up, letting the sunlight glint off its surface. "This award," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "belongs to all of us. To every person who has worked on this project, to every bear who has trusted us enough to let us into their world, and to the wilderness itself, which has so much yet to teach us." The ceremony concluded with a series of presentations from other researchers who had been inspired by Jack's work. As the day wore on and the visitors began to depart, Jack found himself once again alone on his porch, watching as the bear family ambled back into the depths of the forest. He fingered the medal in his pocket, marveling at the journey that had brought him to this point. From the depths of grief and isolation, he had found a new purpose, a new connection to the world around him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Jack felt a familiar presence beside him. Though he couldn't see her, he knew Sarah was there, her spirit as much a part of this place as the trees and the mountains. "We did it, Sar," he whispered, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We found a way to make a difference, just like we always dreamed." A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and wildflowers. To Jack, it felt like a response, a tender reassurance from beyond. As darkness fell and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Jack remained on the porch, content in the knowledge that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The Darwin Wallace Medal was a great honor, but the real reward was all around him, in the rustling leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, a family of bears was sleeping peacefully, unafraid of the humans nearby. Jack Hawkins, once broken by grief, had found healing in the most unexpected of places. And in doing so, he had helped to heal the rift between humans and the natural world, one bear at a time. As he finally turned to go inside, Jack paused at the doorway, taking one last look at the moonlit clearing. "Good night, friends," he murmured, his words carried on the night breeze. "Thank you for everything." With that, he stepped into his cabin, closing the door softly behind him. But it was no longer a barrier between him and the outside world. Instead, it was simply a thin membrane, connecting two parts of a greater whole, man and nature, existing in harmony, each enriching the other in countless, miraculous ways. And so, as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, the Montana wilderness cradled its inhabitants, bear and man alike, in its ancient, nurturing embrace. The story of Jack and the bears would continue, a living testament to the enduring power of compassion, curiosity, and the unbreakable bonds that connect all living things. As the years continued to pass, Jack's work with the bears and his innovative approach to wildlife conservation garnered increasing attention and acclaim. The success of his methods led to similar projects being established in various parts of the world, from the dense rainforests of the Amazon to the vast savannas of Africa. One crisp autumn morning, as Jack was reviewing data from the latest bear tracking collars, he received an unexpected video call. The face that appeared on his screen was that of Dr. Amelia Chun, a former student of his who is now leading a groundbreaking project in China's Sichuan province. "Jack," Amelia's excited voice crackled through the speakers. "You won't believe what we've managed to achieve here." Over the next hour, Amelia shared the remarkable progress they had made in applying Jack's methodologies to work with giant pandas. Using non-invasive observation techniques and creating safe interaction zones, they had successfully increased the breeding rate of the notoriously difficult-to-breed species. "But that's not all," Amelia continued, her eyes shining with excitement. "We've also seen a marked decrease in human-panda conflicts in the surrounding villages. The local communities are starting to see the pandas as valuable neighbors rather than threats to their crops." Jack listened intently, his heart swelling with pride and hope. This was exactly the kind of ripple effect he had dreamed of when he first began his work with the bears in Montana. As the call ended, Jack stepped out onto his porch, breathing in the crisp mountain air. The clearing before him was empty, but he knew the bears were out there, going about their lives in the vast wilderness. He thought about how far they had come, not just him and the bears, but the entire field of wildlife conservation. Just then, a movement at the edge of the clearing caught his eye. It was the mother bear, now elderly, her muzzle graying, emerging from the forest. Behind her came not just her own cubs, now fully grown, but a new generation of bears. Young cubs tumbled and played in the tall grass, their antics reminiscent of those first cubs Jack had encountered so many years ago. As he watched this multi-generational bear family, Jack realized that he was witnessing something truly extraordinary. These bears were not just tolerating human presence. They were thriving alongside it. The young cubs had been born into a world where humans were not automatically seen as threats, but as potential allies. Inspired by this sight, Jack made a decision. It was time to take the next step in his work. He would establish a training center right here, adjacent to his cabin. It would be a place where scientists, conservationists, and students from around the world could come to learn firsthand about cooperative wildlife management. Over the next few months, with the help of his global network of colleagues, Jack set his plan in motion. Sustainable, low-impact structures were built to house visitors and provide classroom spaces. State-of-the-art observation equipment was installed throughout the surrounding forest, allowing for unprecedented study of bear behavior without intrusion. As spring arrived, bringing with it the first group of eager students, Jack found himself filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Standing before the assembled group on their first morning, he felt a familiar presence at his side. Though he couldn't see her, he knew Sarah was there, her spirit as much a part of this place as the trees and the mountains. "Welcome," Jack began, his voice strong and clear. "What you're about to experience here is more than just a course in wildlife biology. It's an invitation to reimagine our place in the natural world, to see ourselves not as separate from nature, but as an integral part of it." As he spoke, Jack noticed movement at the edge of the clearing. The mother bear had appeared, her gray muzzle raised as she sniffed the air curiously. Behind her, 2 generations of bears watched with equal interest. The students gasped, instinctively drawing back. But Jack held up a reassuring hand. "It's all right," he said softly. "They're just as curious about us as we are about them. This is what coexistence looks like." Over the weeks that followed, Jack watched with pride as the students immersed themselves in the work. They learned to read bear body language, to understand the complex social structures of bear families, and to develop non-invasive ways of studying and protecting these magnificent creatures. But more than that, he saw a change in the students themselves. The initial fear and trepidation they had felt around the bears gave way to a deep respect and sense of connection. They began to see the forest not as a place to be conquered or exploited, but as a complex ecosystem of which they were a small but significant part. One evening, as the sun was setting over the mountains, Jack found himself once again on his porch. The clearing before him was alive with activity. Students sat quietly, sketching and taking notes as they observed a group of bears foraging nearby. The scene was so natural, so harmonious, that it brought tears to Jack's eyes. He thought back to that first encounter, to the terrified cub huddled against his door and the fierce protectiveness of the mother bear. How far they had come since then. How much they had learned from each other. As darkness fell and the stars began to appear in the clear mountain sky, Jack remained on the porch, content in the knowledge that his life's work would continue long after he was gone. The seeds he had planted of respect, of coexistence, of seeing the inherent value in all living things, would continue to grow and spread. In the distance, a bear's low chuff echoed through the trees, answered by the excited whispers of students. Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over him. This was his legacy, not just the scientific discoveries or the accolades, but this moment, this harmony between humans and the wild. As he finally turned to go inside, Jack paused at the doorway, taking one last look at the moonlit clearing. "Good night, friends," he murmured, his words carried on the night breeze. "Thank you for everything." With that, he stepped into his cabin, closing the door softly behind him. But it was no longer a barrier between him and the outside world. Instead, it was simply a thin membrane, connecting 2 parts of a greater whole, man and nature, existing in harmony, each enriching the other in countless, miraculous ways. And so, as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, the Montana wilderness cradled its inhabitants, bears, humans, and all the creatures in between in its ancient, nurturing embrace. The story of Jack and the bears would continue, a living testament to the enduring power of compassion, curiosity, and the unbreakable bonds that connect all living things. In the years to come, the lessons learned in this small corner of Montana would spread, influencing conservation efforts around the globe. And at the heart of it all would be the simple, powerful truth that Jack had discovered on that fateful day, that when we open our hearts and minds to the natural world, miracles can happen.